My name is Rachel. I'm 52 years old. Most of my life, I played things safe, raised 2 kids, worked a steady job at the bank, volunteered on weekends, and believed that love, once settled, was meant to be quiet and comfortable. I wasn't looking for anything more. I thought that part of my life was over. But there's something I need to tell you. Something that changed how I see myself and others. I never thought something like this could happen to me. Please, don't make the same mistake I did. It started on one of those damp, heavy summer nights in July. You know the kind, when the air feels thick enough to press against your skin, and every sound seems louder in the dark. My AC had gone out for the 2nd time that month, and I was standing in my kitchen with a glass of melting ice water, trying to convince myself that sweat was just part of aging gracefully. My best friend, Marianne, lived 2 houses down. We'd been close since our late 20s, raised kids side by side, watched each other get married, then divorced, then try and fail to date again. Her younger brother, Alex, had just moved back to town after a long stint working construction upstate. I hadn't seen him in years. I remembered him as the scruffy, sarcastic guy who used to crash our backyard barbecues and steal beers when he thought no one was looking. That night, Marian was out of town with her new boyfriend, and I had offered to water her plants. I figured the walk might distract me from the heat and the aching quiet of my house. The neighborhood was still. The only light came from the street lamp near her mailbox, casting long shadows across the pavement. I let myself in with the spare key she always kept under the frog statue by the porch. Her house smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. I moved through it slowly, checking her orchids in the kitchen window, running the faucet to splash a bit of water into the potted ficus by the couch. And that's when I heard it, the back door opening. I froze. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment I wondered if I was about to become one of those women in the news who made one bad decision and disappeared quietly in a suburban living room. But before panic could set in fully, I heard a voice, low, familiar, and unmistakably male. Rachel. I turned the corner and saw him. Alex. He looked different. Older, obviously, but more than that. His hair was shorter now, streaked with silver at the temples, and his shoulders were broader, more grounded somehow. He had that kind of roughness that only comes with time and work and being knocked around by life a little. His eyes, though, were still that same deep green, still sharp. He smiled when he saw my expression. Didn't mean to scare you. Marian told me you might stop by. I've been staying here while I get my new place in order. I laughed, a little shaky. You scared the hell out of me. He scratched the back of his neck sheepishly. Sorry. I thought you'd already come and gone. We chatted for a minute. Nothing serious. Just the kind of easy, meaningless words people toss around to cover the silence. Then the lights flickered, and everything went dark. A power outage. It wasn't uncommon in our neighborhood during storms, but I hadn't noticed any thunder or wind, just the humidity and that oppressive stillness. Alex grabbed a flashlight from a drawer and handed it to me. You okay walking back in the dark? I hesitated. The idea of returning to my house, hot, empty, and silent, felt unbearable in that moment. He must have noticed, because he added, You can wait it out here if you want. Might be cooler downstairs. I was just about to head to the basement. Mariana keeps an old box fan down there. I don't know what made me say yes. Maybe it was the heat. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Not with pity, not like I was someone's tired older sister, but with a quiet kind of curiosity. So I followed him. The basement smelled like concrete and old books. He flipped on the battery-powered lantern Marianne kept for emergencies, and we sat across from each other on opposite ends of the old couch she refused to get rid of. I noticed how he kept glancing at me, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but in a way that made me aware of the fact that I hadn't felt seen in a very long time. We talked, really talked, about life, about getting older, about how strange it was to start over at our age. He told me about losing his job, about a woman he almost married but didn't. I told him about my kids moving out, the silence in the mornings, and the way I sometimes forgot who I was when I wasn't needed anymore. And then there was this pause. One of those silences that don't need to be filled. It settled between us like a blanket. Safe, comfortable, intimate. I looked at him. He looked at me. And something shifted. The air in the basement had cooled slightly, the cement walls holding onto a trace of the day's warmth, while the box fan hummed a low, steady rhythm. Outside, the neighborhood was dark and quiet, the kind of stillness that only came when the world had temporarily shut down. I hadn't meant to stay long, but time had a way of folding in on itself when you're talking to someone who's truly listening. Alex leaned back into the worn cushions of the couch, his arms resting along the back, his gaze calm but curious. "You ever think about just leaving it all behind?" he asked. I tilted my head. "What? Like running away?" He smiled. "Maybe not running. Just starting over. Somewhere no one knows your story." I laughed, soft and a little bitter. "I used to, right after the divorce. But I think I got scared of not being someone's wife, or someone's mom, or someone's responsible friend Rachel. I don't know if I'd even recognize myself without those labels." He looked at me in that quiet way again, like he was seeing past the surface. "Maybe it's time to find out who you are without them." There was something in the way he said it. Not pushy, not dramatic, just honest. And that honesty hit me harder than I expected. I don't know how long we sat there after that. It was the kind of silence that didn't press on you. It just existed gently. The fan buzzed in the background, and the lantern threw soft golden light across the room, catching the lines near his eyes, the curve of his jaw. At some point, I stood to stretch. My back had grown stiff from sitting, and I rolled my shoulders as I walked toward the shelves along the far wall. Marianne kept old photo albums and board games down there, most of it coated in years of dust. I ran my fingers over a few of the spines, smiling at the faded labels. Then I heard Alex get up behind me. He stopped just a step or two away. I felt the warmth of him before I turned around. Not too close. Not inappropriate. Just near. "I used to have a crush on you," he said, his voice low but clear. I blinked, caught off guard. "What?" He chuckled softly. "Back when I was 19, you were the sophisticated one. Always so put together. I thought you'd never even notice a guy like me." I smiled despite myself. "You were a punk kid with ripped jeans and bad cologne." He grinned. "Exactly." I looked up at him then, really looked, and something inside me stirred. Not the wild heat of young lust, but something slower, deeper. It wasn't just about attraction. It was the recognition of being seen, of being remembered, of mattering. "You still wear bad cologne?" I asked, a teasing lilt in my voice. He leaned slightly closer. "Guess you'll have to find out." I should have stepped back, should have laughed it off and gone home. But I didn't. Instead, I looked at his face, the creases around his eyes from years of smiling and squinting into the sun. I noticed the way his hair curled just slightly at the edges, how the gray suited him, how time had carved him into something more solid, more real. His hand brushed against mine, tentative, patient. It lingered just long enough for me to know it wasn't a mistake. I didn't pull away. We didn't kiss. Not then. There was something more intimate about the fact that we didn't. Instead, we just stood there, surrounded by the quiet hum of the fan and the dim golden light, the space between us warm and fragile. Eventually, I whispered, "I should go." He nodded. "Yeah, of course." But neither of us moved. That night, walking home in the dark, I felt something in me shift. Not like falling, more like remembering. Like waking up to a part of myself I'd tucked away for so long, I'd forgotten she was there. I lay awake for hours after that, staring at the ceiling. His voice echoed in my mind, not the words, but the weight of them. The way he looked at me, the way I had looked back. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. The next morning, I moved through my house like I was inhabiting someone else's skin. The rooms felt different, not because anything had changed, but because something asterisk in me asterisk had. The silence that usually pressed down on me now felt full of possibility. And the sun slanting through the blinds wasn't just another mark of routine. It felt warm, intentional. I made coffee, fed my cat, and sat at the kitchen table staring at my phone for what must have been 10 minutes. I didn't know if I should text him. I didn't know what asterisk I would say. But I also couldn't stop replaying the look in his eyes when he told me he used to have a crush on me. It wasn't playful or flirtatious. It was something quieter. Something that reached into me and touched parts I thought had gone cold. Around noon, I heard a knock on my front door. I hadn't been expecting anyone. For a brief moment, my heart jumped. I didn't want it to be him. Not yet. But I also desperately wanted it to be him. When I opened the door, there he was. Alex, wearing jeans and a faded gray t-shirt, a small toolbox in one hand, and a crooked smile on his face. "I figured I owed you for scaring you half to death last night," he said. "You mentioned your AC's been acting up. Thought I'd take a look." I stepped aside without hesitation. "Only if you promise not to break anything else in the process." He chuckled and brushed past me, that easy confidence settling into the space like it belonged there. And oddly, it did. We spent the next hour together in a dance that felt oddly natural. Me handing him tools I barely understood, him explaining things I only half listened to. It wasn't about the AC. We both knew that. But it gave us something to do with our hands, something to soften the rawness of what had passed between us the night before. When he finally declared victory over the humming beast in my hallway, we sat down in the living room with 2 glasses of cold lemonade. There was a pause again, but this time it wasn't awkward. It was thoughtful. "I don't want to make you uncomfortable," he said suddenly, looking down at the rim of his glass. "Last night, whatever that was, I just want to say I didn't come back here with anything in mind. I didn't expect to feel." "I wasn't uncomfortable," I interrupted softly. "I was surprised, that's all." He looked up at me, and in that glance I could see the relief, the hesitation, and something else, something I hadn't let myself believe until that moment. "Hope. I'm not 20 anymore," I said. "I don't do reckless. I don't jump into things. But I'm also tired of being afraid to feel something just because it's unexpected." His eyes softened, and he reached out, gently placing his hand on mine. I didn't flinch. I didn't overthink. I let it happen. There was something grounding in his touch. No urgency, no hidden motives, just connection. "I want to get to know you," he said quietly. "Not the friend of my sister version. Asterisk you. Asterisk." That simple line caught me completely off guard. When was the last time someone had said that to me? When was the last time someone even asterisk noticed asterisk who I was beneath the layers of responsibility and middle-aged armor? "I don't know what this is," I whispered. "But I think I want to find out." He smiled. "We've got time." And just like that, it was settled. No declarations, no heavy promises. Just two people, grown, bruised, and unsure, reaching for something real. He left not long after, the sun already dipping low over the rooftops. I stood at my front door and watched him walk down the sidewalk, his shoulders loose, his steps unhurried. At the end of the path, he turned, gave me a small wave, and then disappeared around the corner. I closed the door gently, leaning against it for a moment, heart quietly thudding in my chest. I hadn't felt that kind of nervous since I was 30, maybe even 25. But this time it wasn't a flutter of youthful fantasy. It was something else. It was a beginning. A week passed. Not in a blur. No, each day was sharp and full in a way I hadn't felt in years. There was a lightness to my mornings, a reason to wear lipstick even when I wasn't leaving the house. Alex didn't rush anything. He texted now and then, short, kind messages that made me smile, but more than that, asterisk feel remembered, asterisk, and when we saw each other, it was never dramatic or showy. It was coffee on my porch, or walking together in the evening, or sharing stories we'd never told anyone. There was one night, Thursday, I think, that everything shifted again. We were sitting in my backyard, both of us barefoot, our chairs angled toward the sky. The stars were just beginning to show, and the cicadas buzzed in the trees like an old familiar song. I had a blanket wrapped around my legs, and he was nursing a beer, quiet and thoughtful. "I used to think," I said softly, "that once you passed a certain age, life stopped offering surprises. You just coasted." He didn't say anything right away. Then with a soft breath, he asked, "Do you still think that?" I turned to look at him. "No, not anymore." He smiled, that same quiet smile that always seemed to hold more than words. "I used to be afraid," I continued, "that if I let myself asterisk want asterisk again, I'd lose control. I'd get hurt, or worse, I'd waste what little time I had left chasing something that wasn't real." His brow furrowed just slightly. And now, I met his eyes. Now, I think not wanting anything might have been the real waste. Something passed between us then. Not a spark, not something fiery and fleeting. It was deeper. A steady pulse that had been building quietly in the background, finally finding its moment. He reached over and placed his hand on mine again, just like he had that night in the basement. Only this time, I held it firmly in return. "I don't need forever," I said. "But I want asterisk something honest." Alex leaned forward just slightly, his voice low and clear. "So do I." And then he kissed me. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't some Hollywood moment with dramatic music and twinkling lights. It was asterisk real. Asterisk slow, sure, and tender in a way that made my whole body exhale. He kissed me like he'd waited his whole life to do it, and I kissed him back like I'd forgotten how good it felt to be chosen. Later we sat quietly, the kiss behind us, but the feeling still between us. There was no pressure, no expectations, just warmth, and this sense that something had been unlocked. In the days that followed, we didn't fall into some whirlwind romance. There were no grand declarations, but there was presence, attention, laughter, the way his eyes found me in a room, the way my hands didn't tremble anymore when I got dressed in the morning. And Marianne? She figured it out quicker than either of us expected. One look between me and her brother at a neighborhood barbecue, and she pulled me aside with a sly grin. "You're glowing," she said. I just smiled. "I feel awake." She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She just hugged me and whispered, "About damn time." Now, weeks later, as I sit at this same kitchen table, I think about that night, the broken AC, the power outage, the way his voice echoed in the basement shadows. I think about the version of myself who stood in that house, sweaty and tired, afraid of being seen. She didn't know what was coming. She didn't know how much she still had to feel. But I do now. And if you're listening to this, if you're where I was, stuck between safety and yearning, I want to tell you something. You're not too old. It's not too late. And sometimes the best parts of your story begin when lights go out and someone unexpected walks in.